You may proceed.
Thank you. Well, let me get organized here for a minute. The state was, I hope, successful in convincing you that Keith Agee obviously committed first-degree murder. There is no doubt here what he did, as we've all said, horrific, horrendous. He caused such harm to so many people. You'll note, it's interesting to me when Sheila was testifying, she was talking about the harm he did to the Sims family and everything else. And again, no one's making a hero out of Sheila. She did what she did, she said what she said, and we'll get that in a minute. But if you come into this case believing she's innocent, which was such a big thing we talked about in jury selection, if you came in totally clean and you left your minds open and you weren't going to be impressed enough by the first thing you heard that you were going to judge everything by it, then there's also other people that were hurt too. She was hurt tremendously. She lost her son. She lost her new daughter. She lost her grandchild. She lost her piece of life. She's going about her business. She's got a great job. She's working. She's doing her best to get through life. She's got a son that is, you saw him, you heard about him, and you've seen the text. But she's living a life, and this catastrophe happens, okay? So let's back up. The state's proven that Keith did this. They do the same thing in their closing, and they're gonna have a chance to come back, and after I've said everything, they're gonna reiterate it and exploit what I've said. So I ask you again, till the very, very end, keep your minds without a decision till you've heard it, okay? So Keith tells Mom, I'm gonna do this terrible thing, and then you've heard the testimony. He said it numerous times. He's threatened to kill his father. He's threatened to kill everybody. He's gonna do this, he's gonna do that. But he never did. There was that talk about when he was a teenager and he had a thing with another teenager, etc. That's not relevant to you. It may say, well, she should have known he had a propensity and all that. That's history. Remember, every time you think about things here, every text, everything she's doing is to stop this from happening. Again, she doesn't believe he's coming. He's the kind of guy that says these things constantly. He puffs up things that he blisters, and that's him. So she's dealing with work, she's dealing with this, and you've seen the text from, well, let me get there. Let me back up. Again, Keith did a horrible, crazy, stupid, vile, vulgar thing that affected everybody. Okay? It turns lives around. It turned her life around. So let's put it into perspective, in the context. She's at work, taking care of these 20, 25 people. She's just been through the last week with him with his nonsense. Is it a vaginal infection? Is it gonorrhea? This you've heard, and I'm not going to put them up. My plan was to put up every single one of those and go over them again with you, just like we did with Sheila. But you're going to have those in evidence. So every time state puts up something like that, just please remember that they're leaving out the whole context. The context is what enables you to understand intent. And so when they argue from their perspective, well, she did this, she did that, she admits that. She didn't come here to say she didn't say those things. She's not even defending them in any other way except, I'm his mother. I try and comfort him, I try and calm him down, I try and keep him in line. That's what mothers do. They don't always do it right. Remember when we talked about, I asked you some questions in Bardier, and what I was trying to get you to respond to was, are we all perfect? Do we all respond to situations perfectly? Do we all deal with stress, nonsense, all this stuff? How do we deal with it differently? And we deal with it differently on different days. So there's mom at work, taking care of business, gets the text. Oh no, I thought this was over. Now you had a chance, and if you'll recall, the state was very content, as they are in closing, to just include that 2 hours of tapes without giving you any insight or feel for what was going on before that. So we have mom at work, dealing with stuff, dealing with what she's been through the last week. Thank goodness from the 8th to the 11th, it's over. He's apologizing, he's saying this. He's all over the place. How do you deal with someone like that? How do you figure? Do you know what they're going to do? Even if they say it. So he says this, she says that. Everything she says to him, and please look at the tapes again, the texts again, I keep saying that, and understand the context. She is trying to calm him down. This is all Keith. He's not coming. But you never know. The ceiling could fall down. He could come. Because anybody who's rational and intelligent thinks, I don't think this is going to happen in a million years, but maybe. So the conversation goes on, and she's back and forth. I mean, for you to think, in the context of those conversations, that when she said, don't shoot at the car, you might hit me, you've watched her, heard her. Is she serious? The state wants you to think that was, hey man, kill her, but don't kill me. I'm your mother. I'm the grandmother of your kid. I mean, it's insane. And that pulling her out of, he's saying, I'm going to have to pull you out of the car. Can you imagine how stupid and crazy that sounds? Well, yeah, pull me, don't hit me. You don't want to do this up there where your child is. She's trying to just stop the nonsense. I mean, how in the world would she, where's the plan? So we have all the week before, with the text back and forth, not one word about, from Sheila, not one word that she's terrible, that this, that, and the other. He's trying to keep him level. And so all of a sudden, now there's a plan. There's no plan, there's no motive. Why in the world would she want favorite kid? Dead. That's how her whole life is. The grandchild now, and the mother of the child. And why in the world? Oh, because she told Keith, I like her, but I love you, Keith. And I'm gonna help you do this because you're my son. My murder? You, from that woman who's telling him all those things about how a lovely life he has, got a child, he's got a future, and she's telling him, yeah, go kill her. I'm going to step aside here. State says she guided him like a bullet. All that stuff to get your juices flowing. If you listen to what was said, the opposite of what she wants. We've all been sarcastic. There are different words to describe it. We don't always say exactly what we mean because we want someone to be, we're all trying to get someone to go to our side and manipulate them to stop being fools or something. Give up your life, son. Shoot somebody. Come on down here. Shoot somebody right in the middle of the day, in the middle of a store with cameras and everything else. Yeah, do that. I'll be waiting for you. Guess I want to watch. Where's the motive? What is this? What are they trying to say? Here's what they're trying to say. We've got these texts. And remember, that's all they had for a minute, for a moment, whatever it was. So if you take those texts out of context and you don't know anything about anything else, then yeah, that's a mother who thinks her son's been wronged and she's going to go after this person who wronged her son. She doesn't think her son was wronged. She thinks he's ridiculous. I mean, it's difficult to make, some of us see things from different perspectives, and that's human nature, and that's what we've been talking about in part here. To me, the case for Sheila was proven more so than the case against Sheila. Why would she want him to do this? And even if you say, well, she was just stepping aside, as the state wants to say, where does that come from? 50 times? 40 times? What are you doing, son? What are you doing? She's a good mother, she's a good person, and you're here making all of these ridiculous statements and allegations. One minute she's terrible, next minute she's great. I want to have a relationship with Casey, so I'm going to be a good boy. I'm putting this all past me. You'll see that in the text. Please, if you still have questions after this, when you go back to that jury room, study those texts. They are not from somebody who is saying, yeah, let's get together and do this. No motive. The opposite. No plan. If there was a plan, would it be by text? Wouldn't there be a phone call? I'm going to meet you. The state saying he walks right in and goes right to the aisle. He doesn't walk in and go where he thinks he walks in the aisle. He goes right up the front of the store, and he's looking down each aisle, and he looks and he sees her. But is there some kind of? Are they trying to say that they can't? That she told him there's no phone calls, there's just the text. So he finds her there on that aisle. Okay? No plan for her to get there or anything else. She finds it. As far as coming here, she looks at you when she was asked that question, me and everybody else. And the state asks Keith, you would not have known where to go unless she told you. No, I wouldn't. Not trying to fudge or hide anything. And again, Keith's not the ideal witness. Nobody wants to call a murderer to the trial of someone accused who's supposed to be a principal. You watched his demeanor. You watched him. All I can say is what he said to you, and what clear to all of us, that there was no collusion between the two. Nothing he said, this is the way, nothing he said indicates one iota that he was motivated by mother, induced by mother, etc. by mother. Everything was, don't do this. And again, the state wants to say, but you never said don't do it. He's a contrary guy. You don't confront them with that. You go around it. You say this, that, and the other to convince them not to. But this whole concept that mother wanted this to happen, again, you take it out of context with just those 4 or 5 words, but you also take out of context from the 40 words that she didn't want this to happen. And we're going to go through reasonable doubt in a minute. But if you weigh these statements here, and then you weigh in the conversation prior to this, you will see that there's absolutely no proof beyond it to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that she wanted Keith to commit this heinous act. It's just, it's not there. Very difficult when you're accused of something and you've done stupid things or said stupid things, or what is stupid to others, but to you at the time. It's very difficult to defend that. I mean, every one of us, if you take out of context what we've said or done at a certain time, did you say that? What did you mean? Well, and then you explain it. Oh, intent. That's the key word here. We all agree. I mean, State put on that wonderful case against Keith. We sat there all through it. Very few objections from me, a few things. If you'll remember, I asked the fellow who ran the videos at the Home Depot, and you listen to his testimony, and then, and sure, because one would think that, there's cameras all over the place, and that people who work there would know where they were. Did Sheila have any idea? Is there any way she would know where the cameras were? No. So please, if there's any thought about aisle 52 and no camera, Sheila had no knowledge of cameras. Okay. You saw the video of Keith pulling up. I think the state said something about he pulled up alongside Mom. First of all, he probably didn't know what car she was driving. We didn't hear testimony, I don't remember, but she drives different cars all the time, and she drives a company car. He doesn't know well enough, and you can see by the conversations, he doesn't talk to Mom every day, doesn't see Mom every day. They text a lot when they text, but he comes right off the road, pulls right into a spot. And he was not right next to her car. He was about 2 or 3 cars away. But there's no evidence that he knew where her car was or that was her car. So he pulls in, he walks down, and you see him on the video do his thing, goes down the aisle. You saw her waiting, I'm going to guess 30 minutes plus or minus, maybe 40 minutes, walking back and forth, back and forth. She's waiting for him if he's coming. She's not sure. She ends up, after all that time, my gut feeling was right, he's not coming. This was all typical Keith. So takes a breath, goes back to work. Still probably, looking over her shoulder once in a while. Wasn't long. He gets there, walks right down the aisle. Whatever, that one. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but look at this picture. This is a still from those videos. And I ask you to, maybe, would you take a quick look and just pass it around? Look at the expression on the face. Again, maybe it's me. I've been around a long time and looked at a lot of expressions and heard a lot of things. That's not a happy face. That's not a face of somebody who's walking up and down the aisles waiting for somebody so that that somebody can commit a heinous crime. That's the face of an angry, distraught mother waiting for her son to come, who she said, "You're going to come, you're going to see me. And you're going to have to shoot me." A mother who's controlled her son for the most part over the years. Nothing like this was even in the remotest of her mind. He's saying the same old nonsense, but now he's pushed it. I've just spent an hour and a half on the phone with this guy, trying to reason with him, trying to be the mother that I'm supposed to be, and then he's telling me I'm an MF. And, you know, this is a great little chance for me to switch it. It's no longer going to be me. You called me an MF? You come see me now. It's not her anymore, it's me. Again, an attempt to mollify, to change his mind, manipulate him so that he's not going to do this stupid thing. I mean, it's, to me, clear as day. This is evidence for you. You're going to bring it back along with the other evidence that I encourage you to look at. We had the ballistics and all of that. And, you know, it was very thorough and very good. And the state, you know, if they're going to charge Sheila with the murder, they have to prove the murder. So, you know, all that stuff, we just, you know, yes, we know that. We're not here to say that. We're here to say today that everything Sheila did was not with an intent for anything harmful to happen. And that's the key to this case. Intent. The state, and unfortunately I can't read my own writing most of the time. Mr. Martinez to stand, and I did this and I did that, and I'm the investigator on the case. Okay, that means, you know, someone's charged with murder. You must have been pretty thorough to come up with that. And, well, no, I really wasn't. Saw the texts. That's where my focus was. Rush to judgment. And that's what, again, what we do as human beings. He saw that. Hey, let me just get the day, and that's it. Well, you know, that's maybe par for the course, unfortunately, but this is serious stuff. Sorry if I upset him. Sorry if he was, maybe, I don't know, taught a lesson, whatever. But you knew from those texts that there was something going on before, and then he puts into evidence from the 5th or the 6th, whatever it was, that there was this thing about the gonorrhea and about an infection, and why not go back and look? But it didn't, so it's easy. If we hadn't have been able to show you that, then I don't know that you'd have that perspective. And so I guess that goes along with the whole point of jumping the gun, and you came in here, she's charged. She's charged with murder. She must have done something. And that's what I really tried to get you all to just clear it away. Open up the thought process and let it all come in at one time, hear it all, and then see if the state meets their burden of proof. State was reading to you from the instructions, and I have some. These are a little bigger for me. Murder in the first degree. To prove the crime of first-degree premeditated murder, the state must prove the following three elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Victim is dead. Yes. The death was caused by the criminal act of, it says here, defendant. Let's say another. Yes. There was a premeditated killing of the victim by that another, Keith. Yes. Definition. An act includes a series of related actions arising from and performed pursuing to a single design or purpose. We all agree that Keith appeared to have a single design or purpose. Clear from the evidence, if not clear, then certainly a reasonable doubt from the evidence that Sheila did not have a purpose, a single design or purpose. Killing with premeditation is killing after consciously deciding to do so. Keith, not Sheila. The decision must be present in the mind at the time of the killing. Keith, not Sheila. The law does not fix the exact period of time that must pass between the formation of the premeditation intent to kill and the killing. Keith, not Sheila. The period of time must be long enough to allow reflection by the defendant. The premeditated intent to kill must be formed before the killing. Keith, not Sheila. The question of premeditation is a question of fact to be determined by you from the evidence. It'll be sufficient proof of premeditation if the circumstances of the killing and the conduct of the accused convince you beyond a reasonable doubt of the existence of premeditation at the time of the killing. Keith, not Sheila. An issue in this case is whether Sheila did not act with, well, I don't know that we need to read that. Talk about excusable homicide and other things that all apply. In other words, for it not to have been premeditated, they thought, the judge is going to read you this. I'm just going to leave it out for time purposes. At the end of the charge, Judge reads, if you have a reasonable doubt about whether the defendant acted with a premeditated design to kill, Keith, in the heat of passion based on it, you should not find, the state went into second-degree murder to prove the crime of second-degree murder, which is a lesser, and they explain that to you. If you don't think, yeah, there's not enough evidence that Sheila committed first-degree murder. To prove the crime of second-degree murder, the state must prove the following three elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Victim is dead, Keith. The death was caused by a criminal act of Keith, yes. There was an unlawful killing by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. Well, if Keith was on trial, a jury could listen to that and surmise that, maybe he didn't have, whatever, and maybe do that. Again, not Sheila. An act includes series of related actions arising from performed pursuant to a single act, purpose imminently dangerous. I'm not going to read any more of that. The third lesser included manslaughter. And one could say this could be interesting in this case. I'm going to read you after I'm done with manslaughter, principle, so please bear with me, okay? To prove the crime of manslaughter, the state must prove the following two elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, there are two ways to do this. Well, the victim is dead, and then two, A, the defendant intentionally committed an act or acts that caused the death of the victim. Well, Keith certainly did that. The defendant intentionally procured an act that caused the death of the victim. Keith did it, but let's stick Sheila's name in here. Sheila intentionally, remember that's the key to everything. The state, me, you're going to have to make a decision based on that, these facts, the context, the desire of each person. The death was caused by the culpable negligence of the defendant, okay? Every person has a duty to act reasonably towards others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intention to harm, that violation is negligence. The defendant cannot be guilty of manslaughter by committing a merely negligent act, or if the killing was either justifiable or excusable. That's never applied in this case. To either first, second, this, nothing justifiable or excusable with what Keith did. In order to convict of manslaughter by act, it is not necessary for the state to prove that the defendant had an intent to cause death, only an intent to commit an act that was merely negligent. Let me read this again. Okay. In order to convict of manslaughter by act, it is not necessary for the state to prove that the defendant had an intent to cause death, only an intent to commit an act that was not merely negligent, justified, or excusable, and which caused death. To procure means to persuade, induce, prevail upon, or cause a person to do something in, read 2C. Okay. I don't have that here, but they go on to define culpable negligence. Let me see, my jury instructions are a little bit better. As I'm looking for this, remember intent. Manslaughter. To prove the crime of manslaughter, the state must prove the following two elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Brooklyn Sims is dead. Sheila Agee or her accomplice intentionally committed an act or acts that caused the death. We know Keith intentionally did it. Did Sheila Agee intentionally commit acts to cause that death? Were her conversations with her son, her actions that day, intentionally to cause the death of Brooklyn? Every person has a duty to act reasonably towards others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intention to harm, that violation is negligence. The defendant cannot be guilty of manslaughter by committing a merely negligent act, or if the killing was either justifiable or excusable homicide, as I previously instructed you. The explanations of justifiable, that's not necessary. In order to convict of manslaughter by act, it is not necessary for the state to prove the defendant had an intent to cause death, only an intent to commit an act that was not merely negligent, justified, or excusable. Your questions that you go back and discuss, the question here, was Sheila's act an intentional act to cause this? And if it was an intentional act, was it just negligence on her part, or was it gross negligence on her part? Culpable negligence is going to be defined for you. As I have said, every person has a duty to act reasonably towards others. If there's a violation of that duty without any conscious intention to harm, that violation is negligence. But culpable negligence is more than a failure to use ordinary care to others. In order for negligence to be culpable, it must be gross and flagrant. Culpable negligence is a course of conduct showing reckless disregard of human life or of the safety of persons exposed to its dangerous effects, or such an entire want of care as to raise a presumption of a grossly careless regard for the safety and welfare of the public, or such an indifference to the right of others as is equivalent to an intentional violation of such right. The negligent act or omission must have been committed with an utter disregard for the safety of others. Culpable negligence is consciously doing an act or following a course of conduct that the defendant must have known or reasonably should have known was likely to cause death or great bodily harm. Okay. I'm sorry I'm going on so long here, and I hope I'm not boring you to death putting you to sleep. But all of these require a consciousness that what's going to happen is going to happen. When you read, you've heard them once or twice, the states showed you some of them. Again, just the ones they want you to hear, leaving out. But when you go through those texts, is there a conscious, on her part, desire for the act of murder to occur, for these acts to have occurred? Now, I've read you those definitions, but here is the final one, that if the defendant helped another person or persons commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if she had done all the things the other person or persons did, if the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt, not just beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant intended the crime to occur. And the defendant did some act or said something that was intended to and that did, intended to and that did, incite, cause, encourage, assist, or advise the other person or persons to actually commit the crime. And the state is saying she gave him the address. She told him, if you don't kill her, you're a... She said, don't shoot because you might hit me. Do it here, do it there. Obviously, if you think that with what Sheila did that day, August 11, 23, if you think when you read those texts and the text before, and you put everything in context, then if you think that she wanted this to happen and aided and abetted it happening, then she's a principal. But if you're not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, it's not just, well, you know, she said those things and it's terrible, and then, you know, maybe she... That's not enough. You must be convinced. This is our backbone of our law, beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, that that was her intent. The evidence you've heard is just some words, and the state aggrandizes them. She said stupid things when you come back to the end result. She wishes she'd have done it differently. Goodness only knows she wishes she'd have done it differently. But that's not a crime. That's not a crime. The next instruction is plea of not guilty, reasonable doubt, and the burden of proof. The defendant has entered a plea of not guilty. This means you must presume or believe, coming in here, she's innocent. The presumption stays with the defendant as to each material allegation in the indictment through each stage of the trial, unless it has been overcome by the evidence to the exclusion of and beyond a reasonable doubt. To overcome the defendant's presumption of innocence, the state has the burden of proving the crime with which the defendant is charged was committed, and the defendant is the person who committed the crime. the defendant is not required to present evidence or prove anything. Whenever the words reasonable doubt are used, you must consider the following. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, a speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt. Such a doubt must not influence you to return a verdict of not guilty if you have an abiding conviction of guilt. On the other hand, if after carefully considering, comparing, and weighing all the evidence, everything we've heard, there is not an abiding conviction of guilt, or if having a conviction, it is one which is not stable, but one which wavers and vacillates, then the charge is not proved beyond every reasonable doubt, and you must find the defendant not guilty because the doubt is reasonable. So this all comes down to the text. What did they mean? What was her intent? You've heard from her, you've heard from the state. You've heard that she did this, that, and the other, she said this, but you've also heard the rest. You've heard that after it happened, she was in shock, she's whatever. Did you erase your text? She told you what happened. She's in that state, she's this, she's that, she's trying to call him, she's trying to text him, turn yourself in, and then she saw baby next to his name there, that's what she has him listed as, and erased it. Now, she also said to him, or he said during the course of the text, this is so stupid, erase this. Why? Because it was stupid, it was obnoxious. I don't want to be reminded of this. This sounds terrible. And God only knows it sounds terrible. That's why we're here. We're here for the very reason that somebody might erase that. Oh my God, they're not going to understand what we were doing. They're going to take it out of context. Maybe I erased it. My son did this horrible thing. I don't know. I'm not thinking straight. I can't believe it. He better turn himself in. They know who he is. He's not going to get away with this. This is crazy. But that's no indication of guilt. I don't know why it was erased. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. But after this happens, it's beyond comprehension. You've just had your life turned upside down by your son. There's been a death. You've just lost your daughter-in-law, your son, and your grandchild. I mean, what in the world would she have had to gain? I don't know where this state's going to come up. Well, she just loved her son, and, he's going to do it. So what? What? She got tired, this mother, who's not perfect, but who's worked all these years with him to try and keep him in line and everything else. Yeah, it's time. I've had it. Do it. She's got a great life going for her. She's not stupid, ladies and gentlemen. And she comes from a different place than most of us do in that sense, she told you. The language, the innuendo, all that. It's not something all of us, the words and the expressions and everything else. Some of us don't talk that frankly. We don't use that kind of language. That's not a crime. Woman was only trying to do, to the best of her ability, what a mother does, what a friend does, what a decent person does. Oh, the state's going to talk about that. Some more of those texts, and they're going to say, look, here it is. She just knew like a bullet. Well, it's not like a bullet if you don't know, if you don't intend for it, if it's not a conscious effort. Let me see if I have a few things else I want to talk about. Many things that when the state came up and gave their closing and when they cross-examined her. I'm standing there, sitting there, watching, listening. Yeah, you can attack somebody real well when they put themselves in this position. But you heard Sheila's responses, you watched her body language and everything else. And again, why would this person in a million years want that effect to have happened? States can say, she should have known, she should have known. Again, please don't forget the relationship. Don't forget Keith's past, his history, and it's not going to happen. He's not even going to come. But if he comes, okay, I've now changed it. It's me. He's not even going to see her. And by the way, she was told he was coming. She handed the phone back. Basically, he's acting up again. She had no reason, and you heard the testimony of the gal, that she didn't look scared or anything else, because it's Keith. Why would I be scared? Hopefully, watching those earlier texts helps you in this case, hopefully. Perspective, intent, context. State's burden, beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, to convict her. You have to be convinced. Not just, yeah, well, she could have done better or anything else. You have to be convinced by that standard that when she was communicating with her son, she had the intent for him to do this. Careless, sloppy, improper, you could have done better, you could have called the police, you should have done this, you should have done that. That's not beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. That shows that, hey, she could have done better. She could have been smarter. And you could even go as far as to say she was negligent in that she didn't do better. But that is not a crime. Even manslaughter, gross negligence. And they define that for you. I've read it. I'm not going to go over it again. So, again, please bear in mind, you're going to hear the state. I've left out, goodness knows how many things I can't read that I wrote. State in closing said something about, quoting Sheila, somebody will take care of your daughter. Being facetious, she's being sarcastic. You're going to do this? Well, that's okay. Somebody's going to take care of your daughter. Or, son, you go ahead and kill her because somebody will take care of your daughter. Again, with all the other things, it's hard for me, and I know I've spoken longer than I want to, and it's hard for me to even do this now because to me, it is so clear what the evidence shows that I'm going over and over things, difficult, so clear. If it's not so clear, it's certainly unclear. Unclear is not proof beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. Please bear that in mind when you hear the state. When you hear the judge read you the instruction, you will have the instructions to go back with. Yes, Sheila told him where they were. Yes, Sheila said the things she said. From the evidence you've heard, can you really think that she wanted her son to do what he did? It's not there. It's not there at all. She said this, she said, we know that. We've heard it. And you've heard why and how it happened. you do this, son, she's not going to have a mother. She's not going to have a father. Don't you forget that I'll tell her every day for the rest of her life that you chose your selfish, self-centered, me crap over her. She'll probably end up committing suicide and being raped, suicide. What more strong language can a mother use to convince her son that what he's thinking, he's talking about is just irrational? What more could she say? She's already said everything else. She said it all with the intent to keep him calm. Again, don't forget Keith's history. Don't forget that she's still thinking this is all nonsense. He's not coming. And if he comes, he's certainly not going to do this. That's bizarre, incredible. To think the opposite, has the state proved that to you beyond the exclusion of every reasonable doubt? They argue they have, but they have that text, those texts, and they don't have the insight into the relationship other than you've seen it, heard it, and know it. Okay? I leave you with that. I know I've left things out. When you go back, you know, if the state says some things that I could have said, should have said, then please think, are they meeting their burden? Have they met their burden? What would Ackerman say? What would any reasonable person think in the contrary? They've got their case, tried to make it with the extra knowledge we have and with everything else we have. We know that they have not proven their case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. There's not even close. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a break.